Good evening. Welcome to the last segment of our spring primary Vote-a-Thon. We are live and our production team is back in the background taking your comments and making sure that we can see you online. Next, we're going to see a previously recorded message by our Executive Director, Tammy Rivera.
Welcome. Good morning. Give me a second while I invite our Spanish-speaking neighbors to join us through our translations and interpretation accessibility. Buenos días, mi gente. Gracias por estar con nosotros este día de la elección primaria de la primavera. Si usted quiere acceso al programa en español, nosotros tenemos todo este programa por traducción en el número, si marcan 646 749 3122. Cuando le contestan su llamada, compartan el código de acceso que es 779 328 221. Y ahí aparece en la pantalla para ayudarles a ustedes también. Antes de empezar el programa, yo quiero compartir un mensaje con nuestra comunidad inmigrante, que somos casi todos los que estamos aquí en la nación, menos esas personas indias indígenas del país y nuestra comunidad mexicana, que era una tercera parte de lo que ahora es los Estados Unidos. Todos somos inmigrantes voluntariamente y a veces involuntariamente por condiciones que sabemos muy bien en nuestra historia. El mensaje que le queremos enviar a nuestra comunidad es esta. Aquí estamos para ustedes, para nosotros, nuestra comunidad muy querida inmigrante. Si usted tiene una necesidad de cualquier tipo, usted puede ponerse en contacto con nosotros. Ahorita vamos a compartir cómo se puede conectar con nosotros y vamos a hacer todo lo posible para conectarles a ustedes a la información y los recursos y las organizaciones que necesitan para cualquier apoyo que se le aparece. All right, folks. Good morning on this spring primary election time. We're here with you all day and very honored to try to give you information and resources so that you can activate your democracy muscle. Very important, always, especially now. My name is Tammy Rivera. I'm the executive director and the lead organizer here at Southside Organizing Center. Southside Organizing Center is the longest serving grassroots organization in Milwaukee South Side. And so we're very happy to be celebrating 35 years of service to you, our neighbors, our fellow neighbors. I want you to know it takes a whole team, a lot of stress, a lot of work to make this happen. And we're very glad to be part of that and here with you today. But I want to just share with you the members of the team. There's a lot of folks who make this happen. Carmen is our legal and civic lead, and she did the prep for this Vote-a-Thon, all the coordination. Gloria Garza is our new Centro Latino manager. You'll be hearing more about that in the days and weeks to come. Stacy is our organizer, and she does our public resources coordination, keeps us up to date on, when the streets get plowed and where you can go for weatherization, etc. And then we have Gladys Morales back, our veteran staffer. She was here before I arrived, and she's back organizing, and she's going to be our community and economic development lead, bringing housing and gardening services and other like needs for our community. And then Mario Canacasco is our comms and digital organizing coordinator, and he's also serving as our interim IT. And some of the things he does is he's doing production today, and Stacy's backing up. But he also coordinates our bilingual services. And shout out to Miranda Medina, longtime interpreter with us, who's providing the interpretation via the phone number we shared earlier. And then Jeanette Torres is the organizer of our youth programs, and she coordinates all the incredible work and supervises and helps develop the youth, and does a fabulous job working with them to create digital material and graphic design and videos for the organization. And then some of the youth today, we're going to have Kimari and Bella Isabel coordinating or hosting the 12 o'clock segment of the Vote-a-Thon. So it's a youth takeover. We get super excited. We're the most proud and the most excited about anything our youth do. And then Jorge Perez joined us, and he's our youth and leadership director, helping us to, get more formalized as our youth program grows and help relaunch our leadership initiatives. And then Tony Chavez is our floater today, making sure he can help problem solve and support all that's happening. And he's our operations director. And then our newest staff, Jennifer Leon, Jenna, is the executive and projects coordinator, and she's learning production and communications today. And then last but certainly not least, we have Wilma Ortiz, and she's our ops and project assistant, assisting us to get everything rolling too. And you'll meet all the youth later at the 12 segment. Bravo to all of you who went out and voted early and absentee voted. I wanted to, and I couldn't make it happen, so I'll be going out today between segments and doing my vote. Here's what I want to tell you. Sometimes during the spring election, we have very low voter turnout because it's not a big presidential election. But it's critical that we continue to develop our voting muscle and that we show our voting numbers even when there aren't tons of elections on that. So today you're going to hear about the Department of Public Instruction race. And you may think, oh, my kids are not in public school, or you don't understand it a lot. But even if that's not important to you, even though it should be, what's important is that we continue to demonstrate that people should take the South Side serious. And voting, right, is the thing folks pay attention to. So even if you're tempted not to vote so that they see the numbers on the South Side are increasing and people take your vote seriously. And then our democracy will work better when people know we're going to vote, and that if they don't represent us well and our ideals, they're not going to be in office. So that's my plea to you today. Even if you don't want to vote, even if you don't care, go to demonstrate the numbers. And the other thing I want to share with you is, we don't know this because we haven't experienced it, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. People fought and even died for our right, to vote. Even in my grandmother's time, like women and people of color didn't have the right to vote. And we should really take that serious and not take it for granted, because that could go away again. So be with us today. I want to share that you might see us with different hairstyles and different outfits because we pre-recorded some of our messages today, because sometimes we have problems with the live feed. So to be a little safer, we pre-record some things. We'll be with you today at 8. The youth are going to take over at 12 p.m. You don't want to miss that. And then we'll be with you at 6 again. And then just as a disclaimer, the views and opinions shared today may or may not be that shared by SOC or Reflect SOC. And so we'll get the rest of the program going. I'll turn it over to Carmen.
Thank you again to Tammy for that introduction to the program. Like I said, we are here live. If you have comments, please join us in the chat. We would like to see your names, and we would like to respond to your questions if we're able to. Throughout this Vote-a-Thon, we are asking people to complete the survey to evaluate this programming. And we have a link in the comments for a Survey Monkey to to allow us to improve the programming that we have for you during the Vote-a-Thon. Again, we're live. Our number is 414-672-8090. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and different other platforms online. The next person or the next video you'll be watching is an interview between our executive director and the Honorable Pedro Colon. Pedro Colon is a judge with the Court of Appeals, District 1, and he's here to talk about constitutional rights and executive orders and things like that. Thank you.
Buenos días, Judge Colon.
How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
It's a pleasure to see you.
We are in so much need of your presence, your experience, and your wisdom in today's times. And so we appreciate you making the time for our forum.
I'm happy to be here.
Would you share with us your current role? I want to tell folks again that we're in the presence of our first elected Wisconsin official, and who's Latino. And tell us a little bit about where your career took you to where you are now in the role that you're playing.
So, you know, I grew up not far from where you're sitting, Tammy, and I always counted on good people, and it just so happened that many systems don't count on us, or at least don't count us. And so I was very interested in through high school with government. I've always stuck to me, and I've always had an affinity towards our own community, in that I expect it to do its best, but it can only do its best if we, the adults, are our best. And so I've been, you know, part of it is luck, part of it is sort of the context. Our community has grown tremendously, and with it, I have grown. If my community doesn't grow, I don't grow, and that's the way I look at it. So we have to grow, but to grow, we have to be in the system. We have to engage our responsibility back to the overall community, and do a lot of things that aren't easy. But you're doing a lot of this work. I appreciate it very much. And there's a lot of other people that do the work. But ultimately, it's about, you know, I just, you know, part of it is luck, part of it is a great community to be in, and part of it is a lot of support from a lot of good people. And of course, the daily grind that I have to do for myself, but that's all right. That's part of, I really enjoy it. I've never, you know, I've been a state rep. I loved it to this day. It could, you know, if you catch me on the right day, I'll tell you that's my favorite job ever. You know, I was a circuit court judge, which obviously required a lot of responsibility for not only my community, but all the communities in the county of Milwaukee. And I was happy to do that well. And the governor saw fit to appoint me to the Court of Appeals. So now I have a broader sort of responsibility to the law. And so I know that you want to talk about some things that are happening today, but I do want the community to understand that I am a state judge, and that I am not a specialist in immigration, and that immigration law is something that is run through the federal system, but it has implications in state law. As we know, we share our power with the federal government, and so there are some innate rights that you have as a Wisconsinite that sometimes implicate how the immigration system works, you know, so that's very pertinent. I don't know if you want me to say it in Spanish the best that I can.
We have an interpreter.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
A line. So anybody who is with us today, Spanish speaking, Miranda is on the phone with them as they watch simultaneously with us. So
Okay.
they'll hear everything then.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that people understand their rights are not dependent on language. They're not dependent on anything other than being a human being. We're still a free country. We like to, and when we have expectations, and they're rooted in the law. So, I mean, this is not something that we made up last year. This is since the inception of the United States of America. We have some rights. They're inalienable rights that we all have, independent of who you are. You just have to be a human being.
Great affirmation for us all. And so let's talk about the components of government. I remember, times being kind of bored in school and thinking, how is this, relevant? How relevant it is today. And so could you walk us through some information to help people understand that we have a triad system of government, the courts, judicial system, the president and his executive power, what that means, and what are the parameters, and then Congress and i.e. the legislature. So could you talk to us a little bit about the role of the courts or the judicial system so people understand what we're living and what can and can't be done, or what the processes would be to move forward?
So to keep it, sort of simple, essentially the courts are the place where we interpret our disputes. And more importantly, and exclusively, the courts interpret the Constitution. So when I told you had some inalienable rights, there are all sorts of contexts, whether it's meeting with police on the street, whether it's meeting with an ICE official, whether it's meeting even with a social worker. There are constraints to those activities, and they're rooted in the fact that you cannot enter into somebody's property and various other rights. And so the courts interpret all those contexts. How is it? And you can imagine the amount of police contacts out there or immigration contacts and the context under which they occur. So we interpret them and we say, well, this is unconstitutional, this is constitutional. And that's our role. That's our role for what we're talking about today. We have other rights in our Constitution as to education, in our state constitution, as to supremacy with what law gets to be applied. Voting is a constitutional right. So when the legislature sometimes says, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z before you vote, many people bring it to the courts and say, well, can they do this? Is this something that is consistent with the constitutional rights as they're expressed in our Constitution? So basically, we are the last resort, although we're being resorted to more and more because the legislature, remember, this is a triangle, if you will. And so, and nobody's on top of it. So everybody has their power. The legislature with the Senate and the Congress have the ability to legislate, and that is to put money into programs, to tell us how those programs are going to work, how it is that we want to structure our environmental rights, our educational rights, our transportation rights, everything that touches government, which is basically everything that we see around us. Well, the legislature has the ability to determine how that happens. The governor, obviously, and the state has the power to introduce that initial budget, which is really a lot of it happens around the budget. And the governor gets to also run the agencies. They have the power to run agencies. And so you are finding today that there's a lot of talk about how this current president has decided that certain monies will not flow because we are either serving immigrants or we are serving Haitians or we are serving, whatever it is that they call DEI. which to me, DEI is sort of bandied around, at least rhetorically, politically, all over the place. But the reality is that, at some point it has to be a legal statement about how we're going to comport ourselves constitutionally. Anyway, I don't want to get too far afield, but ultimately, these three branches of government vie for power and determine how it is that we're going to coexist in a free country with the majority of people participating in it. It's not complicated at heart, but it can get a bit complicated when you have people that are exceedingly trying to bend the rules so that they're sort of inflexibly applied in ways in which you exclude people. And that's when we run into problems. And I think we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing a presidency that is guided by sort of rhetorical arguments around race, around ethnicity, around immigration, around criminality, around drugs. And they sort of conflate all that and say, well, whoever doesn't agree with that doesn't get to play, or doesn't get to run anything. So, for example, the education secretary told all universities and schools that, for example, they have 14 days to eliminate any part of the school that serves a particular ethnicity. And you don't have to be a legal scholar to sort of wonder, well, if the kids decide to have a Latino group within a broader organization, is that illegal? And can they withhold funding because those students decided to do that?
Interesting. One of the things I want to lift up that I'm hearing you talk about to clear up for folks is there are decisions at the federal level, and then there's another power structure at the state level, right? And so
Correct.
That's really important too, that while there's all this federal activity happening, and indeed it can impact the state also has its own autonomous or layer
Absolutely.
of government. And so everything is not disputable because states have their own money and their own power. But when it comes to the federal, that impacts all. And then I have a question for you that I know many folks are talking about. So we have, the courts, the judicial, like you said, the triangle. We have Congress that you explained. And then we have the president, which you talked a little bit about his activities. Can you share with folks where are the powers of the president? Like, where's the arena that the president can move in executive orders? And sort of differentiate that if he moves within this space, where does the judicial branch and or Congress jump in? Because I think that's where people are like, can he do that? Can he not do that?
Well, so what I think we're seeing is a weaponization of the executive order. So executive orders can work, and they have worked over time. And both Democrats and Republican presidents have used it to differing effects, mostly around immigration, actually. And the reason, and I think we take this for granted, but the reason immigration is such a constant, difficult, hot topic is because Congress will not deal with it. And so it is, I've never changed this phrase, and I know it's probably dated now, but ever since I became into a legislature, immigrants are the political ping pong in this country. So we can't pick on good old Americans on the basis of race, on the basis of ethnicity. We can't pick on Americans, but we can pick on immigrants. And so that should be said. I mean, the reality is we haven't had a normalization in immigration since 1991 or two. and that was actually a Republican president, Reagan, who signed into law. I remember I used to be an immigration paralegal at that time, and I was very busy making sure that a lot of people from a lot of places got their ability to become citizens and become legal citizens. That has not happened in very long. So now we're seeing, DACA. We're seeing a lot of sort of programs that are related to the context, but they're really not immigration reform.
Yeah.
They rely on good faith from the immigrant community, and they rely on good faith from the institutions that deliver services and honor those. And so, but they're not laws. Executive orders are, the president can do whatever he wants as long as it's not constitutional. And so that's where the rubber hits the road. So, for example, I'm sorry, I'm having some technical issues. Can you see me? Okay.
Yeah.
So for example, if you have a law that says that the city of Milwaukee and the police department in Milwaukee has to aid the immigration enforcement, that is simply not true. And in fact, local authorities have nothing to do with immigration. Now, we honor the immigration enforcement system, but we don't honor it to the point that it's unconstitutional. And so you'll see a lot of activity around this. So the executive order regulates the particular agency, whether that's transportation for roads, education for universities, and in K-12 education. But it also has to be constitutional, and it has to respect our individual rights. It has to respect the rights of other branches, and it has to respect our organization as a United States of America, because you're absolutely correct. Every state has its own constitution, and every state has the ability to interpret that constitution. So we are all hopefully in good faith trying to run the program, right? Except, and I'm going to call it arbitrary, because when you have, and I don't mean to laugh, but it is the most bizarre argument I've ever seen in government that the Department of Transportation now says that the more kids you have, the more transportation funding you will receive, which, I guess based on evolving birth rates in the Latino community, I should be very happy. But I think it's the most bizarre argument I've ever heard. But he certainly has the ability to say that, but he doesn't have the right to not fund transportation projects that have been authorized by Congress, back to Congress, right? The power of the purse. They said fund these, so they have to be funded. You can't just halfway through the program say, oh, well, I'll only fund it if your birth rate increases by 10% annually. That's another law.
Yeah.
Go back to Congress and see if they can pass that. So there's all these things at play, but there's the constitutional framework, and there's us, that is human beings that exist in this constitutional framework, and we have inalienable rights. I don't know, maybe I've been thinking about this too much.
No, we're all swimming in it. And so trying to figure out where are the boundaries and where is the process. And so what I hear you saying is the president has the ability to issue executive orders, but they cannot have conflict with the Constitution. So they have to be in alignment with that. And then also they cannot usurp, they cannot go over what Congress already decided.
Exactly.
Right? When we're thinking of those things. Is there a limit to the number of executive orders that can be
I don't think so. It's funny because you see people talking about the framers of the Constitution, and some lawyers are really enamored with the framers of the Constitution. I'm enamored to the point that they were really thoughtful that we still have this great Constitution that works for us, although it is tried all the time. And it grew up under very trying circumstances in terms of respecting the rights of Black slaves and of Black people as a whole, and not to mention immigrants. But it is a great document, and I don't know if I've ever read executive order anywhere in the original, Constitution and the dialogue. It is really a modern. It's become a modern technique or tactic, I guess, of either party trying to say, well, if Congress can't fix it, I'll fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a lot easier to write an executive order because you just tell some staffer, go over there and tell them that we will not have orange juice if it is not mixed with pineapple juice for the rest of our time, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, what? I have to mix orange? I like orange juice. I don't need it with pineapple. And so I'm sort of being, I don't mean to be flippant, but really it's very easy to carve out an executive order, especially if you're not well-intentioned.
Yeah. And so when an executive order is issued, obviously what we're seeing now is if there are any implications to the Constitution, that's going to be taken up in the courts. And then it kind of stops the executive order. That's why you see all these judges pausing several things. And then, like you said, the conflict gets resolved in the court. Correct. So executive order's there. And then if there's an executive order that there is concern that it's usurping Congress, what's the process for Congress reacting to an executive order that is not in alignment with decisions from the Congress?
Well, if you ask me about this Congress, I think this Congress is, in a sunny retreat center because they haven't said a word about anything. They can't even get a budget together. So this Congress is really, but typically what Congress does is say, hey, wait, stop. We didn't fund a bridge, a road, a building, a train in my district based on the birth rate of my district. We just said.
So the Congress can react individually, or is there an act that they can do in committee or as a whole?
Well, they can. Well, they can actually go to the Supreme Court and say this is unconstitutional. For one, they can get together and say, you know what, stop all funding until we decide what to do with this, which is sort of what the president's tact has been. It usually doesn't work because it strains sort of the institutions to a certain degree. And I think since Newt Gingrich in the 90s closed the federal government, nobody has
done it again.
Yeah,
the chaos and the trauma that causes. So Congress our Congress can respond individually, and indeed we have seen some of our representatives speak out, and then the parties could collect and the subgroups could collect to say, hold on, because the other concern I think people are talking about is the quantity of decisions, the speed of decisions, and then just understanding how much change you can make at one time and how much time is needed.
Well, so that's a great point, because I think it's really hard for the courts, any court in any state, even the federal courts, to decide these cases so readily and so quickly. And so, this erratic, irrational diminution of legislation, in my view. But so it's really hard for the courts to cope with that. We are not built for the courts to sort of decide a thing a day.
And in mass, like
Yeah,
so much.
and everywhere in the country as it applies to all the states. So it's really trying, and it's hard to keep up. However, courts will always get to it.
Yeah.
And courts are, the Supreme Court of Wisconsin, the Supreme Court of the United States. They're very aware of the timing of decisions, and they have the right to pick up a case and say, okay, we've had
Prioritize the.
Yeah, we've had enough. Everybody has conflicting views down in the districts or in the Court of Appeals, as I am, and say, well, Pedro and his crew in this district say one thing, another district says another thing. So the Supreme Court usually says, well, give them all to me and we'll figure it out.
Okay.
And so then, remember, the courts provide stability so that we all know the rules of the road. And so without adherence to the legal principles, we don't have a stable democracy.
Yeah.
We have essentially what we all sort of depict the third world countries as being. Really, they're democracies too, but they just don't have that institutional respect for the rule of law. And so, and it's cultural too. I still believe that the U.S. Constitution is the greatest document created for a democracy, even as it is tried and really bantered and bashed and thrown around.
And it's evolved, right? It's been challenged and evolved.
Yeah, no, and it's evolved, to use often cited quote, on the arc of justice. The arc of time always looks towards justice. I think that's what the quote is. But the reality is we have evolved, not easily and not without a civil war. There's been a lot of really difficult chapters, and we're in a difficult chapter right now.
Yeah. And do you have a sense of what the near future looks like? So all these executive orders and changes, many of them have been responded to by a judge for hold and review. What could we expect, like the timelines, or is there any way you can project what would be typical in an untypical situation?
No.
Okay.
I think depending on how, so one thing is to write something down. The other thing is to say, well, I'm actually going to disrupt this institution to the degree that it's not going to be functioning, right? So, for example, and you don't need to think way beyond our district here, our neighborhood. We have schools that serve non-English speaking students, right? Now, ends up being kind of an ethnic dimension in that a lot of our kids, in fact, all of our kids, come from Spanish-speaking countries, right? And so what we try to do, different ways of doing it, and we can talk about what is a good way to educate a child another time, but although you can vote for it today. There is a primary, and it's a very important primary for superintendent of education that everybody should be voting for. Having said that, you can argue how you teach a kid, but ultimately, all these schools are primarily serving immigrant kids who are, a lot of them are more fluent in Spanish than in English. And that was me. I mean, I learned English way after I learned Spanish. So I didn't speak English when I arrived here. And so you could say, well, they were housing me in some kind of ethnic chamber down at Wisconsin Avenue School, teaching me English. And, I should have been in some non-bilingual setting, not understanding a thing in the back of the classroom at some other school, right? But, thankfully at that time and today, still, we have really good people that really care about these kids.
Yeah, and that the purpose of education is that people can be educated, and if language needs to be addressed, that it's there.
But so it's not ethnicity, it's language. So I don't know how they're going to do that dance, and they're going to withdraw all the funding from a lot of schools that are sitting around this neighborhood. I think that would create chaos. And I think my point back to your question, you see that at the court, any court, in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
We cannot run society with our children not being funded.
Yeah. And all the languages that are spoken in this country and all the different languages that need support in education. Pedro, let me ask you one last question. So let's say in these federal waves, the teeth, right, of the executive order, are, this is what I want to happen. And then if you don't cooperate, we're going to pull federal funding, right?
Yeah, basically.
And then we know some of those systems many of those systems highly dependent on federal funding. Is there any reciprocity in states saying, well, if you're going to hold our federal funds, we're going to hold our state funds? Or is there any other thing on the teeter-totter that the states could say, if you hold the federal funding, then we could withhold? Like, what's the equivalent or the response to the state for the states?
So, I have not seen this a lot, but I know there is an argument that was used with Obamacare. And with Obamacare, what the Supreme Court said was, you don't have to take the benefits because the benefits would outweigh the way in which you run your individual states to a degree that's essentially coercion by the federal government. And so, I think that, so for example, a lot of states don't opt into the Obamacare. They essentially get less federal aid and they get pricier healthcare and they get less healthcare, but what's their choice, right? And that's fine, but you cannot force a state to essentially be subjected to coercion by the federal government. Now, like I said, I haven't seen a case personally on this, and I have not studied it a lot, but I do know that that challenge exists, and obviously I've read it in newspapers in some of the cases, but I haven't dealt with that since Obamacare.
Well, we hope, folks, that this has helped you understand a little bit more about our current political, social activities, what's happening with post-election. And are there any sources you recommend, Pedro, as we close out this segment, for where people could learn more about this? Or,
that's an interesting question. I being sort of my tendency is to trust organizations like SOC, organizations like Voces de la Frontera. I trust our community to take care of itself. And I believe that we will do it in good faith and that we will take care of people. And so, if you're interested in learning more about the law, obviously that's a broader concern. But if you want true blue, how to, where to go type of information, I have to say that we have the best community in the state. I mean that. I know I'm probably offending some people when I say this, but I do mean that. I think our agencies and the people that work in this community are maybe not always in agreement, but we are in agreement as to one thing, that our community gets treated with goodwill and respect.
Agree.
And so, I would resort to the people that have always been there for us.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for your time and for your service.
Yeah, thank you all. And don't forget to vote for superintendent. And don't forget to know that you have individual rights and that nobody can come into your house without a warrant signed by a judge. All right.
Muchas gracias, Pedro.
Take care.
We're gonna turn over the program now back to Carmen, who will segment us into the next portion.
Thank you. That was a great interview between Tammy Rivera and the Honorable Pedro Colon. Shout out to the people watching us. I see Paula Nelson, Clary Manuel, and Wilma are watching us. Also, Tony Teyes liked one of our comments. Thank you for tuning on to our program. And now I'm going to do a presentation on my vote. My vote, wwi.gov. In every primary and every election, the Southside Organizing Center takes the time to go back to the fundamentals. We want to be able to show people how to update your voter registration and to make sure that before every election, you make sure you check that your address is correct, that your name is correct, and especially because that's necessary if you move or you change your name, you get married, something like that. It is important that you go and check on your registration so they won't kick you out of the voting rolls. I'm going to share my screen. All right. If you can see the screen, you'll see that we are on the landing page of My Vote Wisconsin. Here, if you scroll down all the way down, you get the option to see the page in English and in Spanish. This page has a ton of information, including how to become a poll worker. They're always recruiting people to do poll work. But for today's date, we are going to look at my polling place and what's on my ballot. And we do that by using the Southside Organizing Center's address. Let's see what we have at 1300 South Layton Boulevard. We have the city of Milwaukee, zip code 53215, and we search. And you'll see that our polling place is Durfler Elementary Schools. The voting times are from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., so you still have time to go vote. And the ward number is 215. In addition to your information on the voting location, you want to know what's on your ballot. And for our area, the only issue in our ballot today is the the State Superintendent of Public Instruction primary. We have 3 candidates. 2 will advance to the April election. So you just pick one of them to advance that person to the following election in April. Other parts of the city, the county have different issues, but that's why it is important for you to check based on your address and see what's on your ballot. On this site, you're able to update your name. You're able to register to vote, but not today. Today, the only place where you can do that is at the voting location. And to be able to register to vote, you need to have your ID with your address. If you don't have an address on your ID, you need to bring proof of where you live. Those are the 2 biggest requirements. Let me get out of here. In addition to the myvote.wi.gov, you can always get information through the City of Milwaukee Election Commission. If you need assistance, you're in a wheelchair and you need someone to bring you the ballot, you call 414-286-3491. We do have boxes, drop-off boxes, but it's too late to drop your ballot at a drop-off box in Milwaukee right now. So you have to bring the ballot to the voting place. and be able to have your voting counted that way. Remember that we have elections on April 1st. At that time, we will be choosing not only the Department of Public Instruction superintendent, we're also going to be choosing a Supreme Court to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So one of the justices is up for election. And now we're going to have a video by our youth. Enjoy.
Thank you, Carmen. We ask that you please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to stay up to date with our events and programming at SOC Milwaukee. Next up, we'd hope that you enjoy a brief commercial from us, the SOC Youth. Hello, neighbors. As we gear up for the upcoming elections, it's important to stay informed and prepared. This video will guide you through the key dates and resources you need to make sure your voice is heard in the primary and spring general elections. And here's a list of important election dates. The primary election is taking place on February 18, 2025. Although the online registration deadline has passed, you can still register in person on Tuesday, February 18, 2025. Also, don't forget the spring general election that's taking place on April 1st, 2025. Registration deadline for the spring general election is by mail and online by Wednesday, March 12, 2025, and in person, Tuesday, April 1st, 2025.
Make sure to mark these dates on your calendar so you don't miss out on the opportunity to participate in these crucial elections.
It's vital to ensure that your voter registration is up to date. You can check your voter status by visiting myvote.wi.gov. This site allows you to verify your registration, find your polling place, and view a sample ballot.
Need assistance? You can call us here at SOC. If you have any questions or need assistance with the voting process, you can reach out to SOC. We are here to help you with any concerns or questions you have about voting. Don't hesitate to call them at 414-672-8090.
Voting is a powerful way to make your voice heard and contribute to your community.
Remember to check your voter status, note these important dates, and reach out for help if you need it. Thank you for watching, and let's make this election count.
As you can see, our youth is very involved in the civic engagement process, and we love them for that. Our next video is a collaboration with Eloisa Gomez from the League of Women Voters. Hi, Eloisa. Welcome for joining us today. How are you?
Good, I'm fine, Carmen. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you today.
Today, Eloisa Gomez is going to talk to us about one of the resources from the League of Women Voters, specifically one of the resources to allow us to know about the candidates running for any particular election. Eloisa, can you introduce you and the League of Women Voters and the segment that we're going to be watching?
Yes, I'd be glad to, Carmen. So the League of Women Voters is a nationwide organization. We are nonpartisan, so we don't support any political candidate and we do not support any political party. We are here to provide as much information as possible to voters so that they can be as best informed as possible when they vote.
And what is the program that we're going to be looking at today?
Well, I'm really excited to talk about Vote411.org. So this is a nationwide resource. And again, it's a nonpartisan resource to help people when they're interested in finding out more information about the candidates, as well as what the position is all about. So we have this available within weeks of every election. So it's available in either English or in Spanish. And Carmen, right at the top where you'll see the word English, if you clicked on that, you will notice that you could see it in Spanish as well. This time we'll be doing this in English. So here is the great resource available to us, and we'll walk through this process. The first thing we have to do is add in an address. And I know that we're going to be putting in the address for the Southside Organizing Center as an example for us to kind of walk through what 411.org is all about, what it has on its website to share with you. So you can, again, select the language you prefer. And after you put in your address, if you stay with English, for example, we'll do a save and view the races. Once we click on that, we're going to see some information that says what are the positions that are on the ballot. Here, this is just, in this case, the Wisconsin Superintendent Public Instruction race. And just before we look at the candidate information, we're going to get some information in either English or in Spanish, a real just summary of what the position is all about. And no problem if you don't have time to review it thoroughly, but it is there available for you. So what we do is we invite all the candidates for every race to respond to a number of questions that we ask. We develop our questions, we send them to the candidate, we encourage them to respond, we let them know that this information is going to be posted. So the important information here is the candidates themselves respond to the questions. We don't interpret what they say, so you're going to see it. Now, I would encourage you to click on the view answers for each one of them, and then you'll be able to say, let's just say you don't know anything about these candidates. Well, you're going to get some general information on each of the candidates. If you want to research them further, it's there available for you. And if you scroll down further, now you're going to begin to see the responses to the questions. And as you will notice right away, one of the candidates has chosen not to respond. And I just want to say again, we invite every candidate to respond, and it's their choice whether or not they're going to. And so you'll see their responses to the first question. If we scroll down further, we have a chance to see there are more questions here. The first one is, each one of them has a different kind of a question. And even if you don't research what the position is about, each of the questions, I think, gives you a sense of what the main responsibilities of this position, what the position is all about. So we will scroll through, we will see their responses. We ask them to, I think we encourage them to not be real lengthy, but some of them very, very much are, and that's okay too. And as we look at and then we say, okay, there's some additional information on the candidates. So you can click here and get more information from each of these candidates. But again, this is a quick resource tool for you. It's as quick as you want it to be. And I just want to emphasize, you can pull out your cell phone when you're at the polls to vote. If you haven't had a chance to do this, you can take out your phone and type in vote411.org, and this information pulls up, so it can help you right on the spot.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop sharing right now, Eloisa, and can you tell us where do we find this information? If we need some additional information about the League of Women Voters, where should we go, and so forth?
Great. So in addition to vote411.org, please visit our League website, particularly our state website, which is, the League of Women Voters, Wisconsin.org. So visit there because that has the most information. You will find it on our local websites as well, but the summary of all the information is there at the statewide website. And in addition, much of it is available in Spanish, as I mentioned before.
And Eloisa, when we have an election coming up April 1st, people should be able to obtain information about those candidates in this site as well. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that is. And in addition, whenever there is an amendment on the ballot, which in this case, April 1st, there will be an amendment, we encourage people to look at our position on the amendment. So we do take positions, we do take policy positions. That's the only thing you'll see from us in terms of how we are responding to a particular matter that affects us all.
Well, thank you, Eloisa, for sharing with us. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you so much.
Hi, I believe that our next segment is a video produced by the youth and the leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Eloisa, for sharing this information with us. Before we finish up today, we can see how many of you are with us, but not your names unless you drop a hello in the comment section. Good afternoon, Tina Ramirez. Thank you for being with us. If you voted early, let us know. If you voted today, let us know and share what voter number you were if you remember. Please don't forget to complete today's Vote-a-Thon survey. Are you interested in social justice and community development?
Civic engagement and a sense of empowerment?
Join Earn and Learn. The applications are open from March 31st to May 9th.
The youth program is from June 23rd to August 10th.
Up to 20 hours a week for $13, ages 14 through 24.
And
we hope to see y'all there.
Save the date. Stock's 35th anniversary retro balls happening Saturday, October 18th, 2025, Sweetest Day. Be on the lookout for our monthly countdown that will include upcoming events and initiatives leading up to our anniversary celebration. We hope to see you all there. Are you having safety concerns in your neighborhood or legally dumping becoming an issue? Or graffiti popping up online? A concert problem? Please reach out to Stock Safety Lead at safety.milwaukee.org. Take down your concern and work with you to fix the problem.
Starting in 2025, SOC will be open the first 4 Saturdays of the month, with each department taking turns offering programming to our neighbors. Stay tuned for more info. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to stay connected year-round.
Thank you. And just a quick reminder, if you're able to do the Survey Monkey to provide us information on how to improve our Vote-a-Thon, please do so. Even if it's after the show is finished, you're still able to see the link in our comments. Now we're going to see a video produced by the ACLU regarding immigrants' rights. The Southside Organizing Center does not provide legal advice, but we want to play this video and connect you with the resources of the ACLU and the Voces de la Frontera. Thank you.
Oops, dropped my phone. Just so you know, folks, when we're on here, we have like multiple methods of communicating to each other with the interpreter, with our guests, with the team. What I'd like to do now is say, especially because Milwaukee is an immigrant landing spot, we have a collaborator from long ago, Urban Anthropology, who documented just around the community of Kazi Park over 111 nations represented in the people who live there from when they came. And so it's really important for us to understand that we're, like I said earlier in the Spanish segment, we're actually all immigrants here, with the exception of our native indigenous First People, and with the exception of the Mexicans who lived, and their land was about a third of the United States, the southern and western portion of the United States. Outside of those two populations, all of us are immigrants. And I'd like to emphasize we're immigrants voluntarily because we came to this country for opportunity, or involuntary or coerced, as in a word that Judge Colon used, through slavery and through colonization of other countries like Puerto Rico. And so, again, we're all immigrants, whether you're a European American or Mexican American or Asian American, etc. And so what we want to do now, because it's a high, intense, and chaotic, confusing, and fearful time for the immigrant community, we want to share that there are some resources of folks who understand your rights, as Pedro talked about, way better than we do. We're not attorneys. We can't provide legal advice, but there are some institutions and some of our partners who are much more versed in this. And so we're going to be sharing now a great resource from the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, so that you understand what people's rights are who are immigrants. And so we're going to go ahead and play a great video that they put out.
It was 5:30 a.m. when ICE came to Esther's apartment. ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The agents lied to Esther, saying they were police officers investigating a crime and her husband, Alexei, was a potential witness. "Is Alexei home?" they asked innocently. Now Esther's gut told her she should cooperate, but she remembered something she'd heard on the radio. ICE had been making early morning sweeps using tricks like this to get people to open their doors. Esther remembered she had rights. ICE may try similar tricks at your home. They may say they're looking for a friend, relative, or roommate. But do not be fooled, and do not open the door. Instead, remain calm and be polite. Tell the agents that you'd like to see a warrant and their ID. Ask them to slip these documents under the door or hold them up to the peephole. Without a warrant signed by a judge, ICE is not allowed to enter or search your home. ICE usually won't have a warrant, but they may lie and say they do or show you something else that looks official. So look carefully and take pictures of whatever they show you. If they refuse to share any of these documents, then ask them for their card and contact information. Do not show the agents anything or say anything except, "I do not consent for you to enter my home. I do not want to talk to you without a lawyer present. Please leave." Now, ICE won't always listen to you and may enter your home using force. But saying these things might help you in court, even if the agents don't listen. The other videos in this series will help you understand your rights if ICE enters your home or arrests you. Esther and Alexei knew their rights, and the officers left. This is all scary, but remember, we have rights. After an encounter with ICE, take notes about what happened, writing down as many details as you can remember. This information might be helpful in future immigration proceedings. It's important that you and your loved ones are prepared for encounters with ICE, and that you have a plan for what to do if one of you is arrested, including information about who to call. If ICE comes to your home, remember, you have rights. Do not open the door. Ask to see a warrant signed by a judge. Tell them you do not consent to them being at your home. Please leave. If a loved one is arrested, you should be able to locate them at locator.ice.gov.
Lots of great information on that video. Also, that video is in Spanish, and we will place the link in the comments. Well, thank you for spending this hour with us. We thank everybody that stay and watch. We also want to thank our collaborators, the Honorable Pedro Colon, for spending a good part of this morning with us, sharing some information about the current situation and constitutional law, etc. We want to thank Eloisa Gomez from the League of Women Voters, Comité por el Voto Latino, ACLU, and Voces de la Frontera for putting this information in a way that is very concise and helpful for our neighbors. Thank you to our youth. If you could see, the youth is very involved in the civic engagement with the organization. And thank you to all the staff that is behind all this production all day long, and our executive director for giving us the opportunity to come to you with this information. Thank you.